Peace and blessings, family. This is your brother asarimhotep with the Madhu Mandela Institute for the Advancement of Science and Culture. Today is Friday, December the 4th, 2020, and today is a Devil's Advocate show. And the topic is how to modernize worshiping the gods in a way that makes sense. This is an open discussion about properly defining what a god is and how we can modernize the concept of worshiping the gods without being spooky. All that and more when we return. Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3. Can y'all hear me now? Let me remove that. Can you hear me? Testing. Hopefully y'all should be able to hear me now. Testing, testing. Good, loud and clear. Appreciate it, appreciate it. And what is this white over here? Sorry. Oh, I see now. Anyway, so peace and blessings, everyone. Thank you for joining me. I apologize for the sound issues. For some reason, it wants to go alt on me when I plug in the headpiece. So hopefully everything is good now. So we're good to go. So I appreciate all of you. Thank you for the feedback, and we can get started for today. So what? Getting back on focus here. What we're going to be talking about today, again, is a way to modernize the concept of God or deity. And so, let me see if I can switch that up so that it's a little better in terms of, there we go. There we go. In terms of modernizing the concept of worshiping the gods. And this topic has come up several times in my studies. So I've been, studying African religion and languages and cultures for over 25 years now. And the more and more that I study and I interact not only with the text, but in living traditions, and really critically analyzing the ideas and concepts and the expressions coming from African people, the more and more I realize that a lot of the concepts and ideas relating to the quote unquote deities is kind of antiquated in some ways, and that many of us go through these traditions not really critically engaging and understanding what these things are. And this goes for, those of us in the diaspora who is trying to reconnect with their, ancestral heritage. And then, of course, those who are practitioners. And so not everybody is the deepest, elder in a tradition and understands things on a higher level. Some are just people, just regular practitioners, and are, just citizens, just people who grew up in the culture. So it's just an everyday thing for some of these. But then, of course, when it comes to, Africa and of course the diaspora, a lot of our ideas about certain indigenous concepts are filtered through the lens of Islam and Christianity and Judaism and Hebrew Israelitism and all of that. Sometimes through Hinduism and Buddhism, all of these other external cultural concepts that may not reflect what is going on in Africa. And so we're going to explore many of the concepts. And of course, if you've been, a follower of this channel and of these discussions, some of this stuff is going to be repetition for you. But I hope to put it in a in a different context to help us, reconceptualize how we approach these particular concepts. And so this is ultimately going to be a conversation about pedagogy. How do we teach these concepts moving forward? And so that's going to be the deeper thought. And so I want to thank each and every one of you for joining this conversation, especially those of you who are listening live. And of course, as always, those of you who are catching the archives. And so, peace to Thought Evoker, Conan Lee, Dynamic, Born Eternal Lord Allah, Ja Mitzvah Nubia, Womp Womp, Sunjata Atta and Zombie, Julanda Zachary, Sylvia Stewart, and Michael Irvin, EJG, aka Shango, Uwa Abantum, and Safa Rabah Muhammad, and Donnie Williams. Thank each and every one of you. Ilanga Banzakila, thank you for joining. And I think that I got everyone thus far. Let me go up. I think that's it. So in terms of the people in the chat, peace to Mr. Ed and Melanated the God King and Tyree Huddleston. Peace and blessings to each and every one of you. And thank you for joining the conversation. And so I also want to give a shout out, of course, to my college fraternity. December 4th is the day that it was founded by 7 college Black men in Ithaca, New York. And I'm speaking of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, the first brotherhood of the Ethiopians. And so, it is what we call Founders Day. So I want to give a shout out to the Black and Old Gold, those Ethiopian brothers who belong to that particular fraternal order. So shout out to all the brothers who may be listening, and we will continue our conversation. So it is going to be deep, and so I pray that y'all got some time on your hands on this Friday, because we finna go in. So I'm going to share my screen on this other computer here, and there we go. And I'm going to increase it. And I will see if, okay, boom. So just want to make sure that it is showing on all the platforms, and it looks like it is. So we will get started. And again, for those of you who are just joining the conversation, the topic for today is how to modernize worshiping the gods in a way that makes sense. And so, as always, I'd like to remind those of you who may not have these texts. These are my latest texts, and that is Illusia Volume 2, China into Religion and Philosophy, and Towards a Comparative Dictionary of Chicam in Modern African Languages. You can find both of these on my website at asarimhotep.com. And if you want to support the channel, one way in which you can do that is through CashApp, and this is the address. And so we will continue. And so one of the ideas, or one of the things that we have to confront, is this notion of worship. Again, the Abrahamic traditions, because of the mandates, for example, that thou should not worship any other gods before me, in which we should really kind of scrutinize that phrase. Because think about what it's saying. Thou shalt not worship any other gods before me. One, it's a recognition that there are other gods. And two, it doesn't say that you can't worship the other gods. It just says you can't worship them before me. But that's another topic for another day. But when you have conversations and mandates like that, and the religious, the external and foreign religions have been imposed on your people in various different ways, it makes you reluctant to seek understanding of your indigenous ways of perceiving the world and the relationships that your ancestors had with the so-called forces of nature and divinities. And so a lot of time has passed, and as I stated in the beginning, our lens for which we view our indigenous traditions are colored through these Abrahamic traditions. And as a result, we don't even really understand some of the fundamental aspects of our traditions. And when we're looking for, answers, when we're trying to recover and retrieve those aspects of our history that were lost as a result of the transatlantic slave holocaust, we most of us have to go through literature that is written by European people trying to articulate what they have saw or what they have seen on the continent of Africa, observing our, ancestors and brothers and sisters and cousins who are currently on the continent now. So when it comes to the idea of worship, people think that the idea of worship is something bad. And people really don't understand what that word means. And so we always got to remember that for those of us who speak English or French or Spanish, these are not our indigenous languages. And even though we speak these words, a lot of times we don't understand what the words mean. Excuse me. And so we're going to go to the online etymological dictionary, as I like to do. And we're going to define a few concepts. So, you know how I like to do before we get started, we got to define the concepts and the parameters for which we're going to have our conversations. So, if we're talking about worship, we got to understand what it means to worship. And so, in the noun form, the worship, the English word comes from an Anglican and West Saxon root meaning condition of being worthy, dignity, glory, distinction, honor, and renown. It is from a word meaning worthy. And so at the root of honor is worth and value. And the sense of a reverence to be paid to a supernatural or divine being is first recorded in the 1300s in terms of this word worship. And so, that's a relative recent association in terms of the word worship in the Indo-European and more specifically the Germanic languages. But the original sense is preserved in the title worshipful. So like when you say the most worshipful master in Freemasonry, for example, or when you talk about the honorable Elijah Muhammad or the honorable Marcus Garvey, these are titles in terms of of glory and distinction. These are titles of dignity that we put on people, who exhibit or who provides value and service to our community. And so in the verb form, it essentially means to add value, worth. When you talk about to honor or to dignify someone, you're adding value, you're recognizing their value to you either as an individual or to a community. So this is one of the reasons why we give out awards, you honor the people who their skills or services has added value to your life. That's what we do. So that's why when, for example, the biblical text tells you to honor your mother and your father, honor is a synonym for the word worship. That's all worship means, is to honor. So it's contradictory, for example, for the Bible to say, not to worship anyone or any other gods before me, but then they'll go around and tell you to honor thy mother and thy father. So this is why words are important. And so this is why we go through the history of these definitions. So let's find out what it means to honor someone. And so when you honor, it means to show respect to. And so, of course, that's the biggest thing in the Black community is respect, is honor and worship. And it means to respect, to esteem, to revere, to welcome, to present. And so it upsets me when a lot of, African-centered people will say, well, we don't worship our ancestors. We show reverence to them. Reverence, honor, and worship are all the same. They're the same concept. They are synonyms. And so if you revere your ancestors, if you revere your parents, if you respect them, you worship them, you honor them. And so we continue. In the Latin, honorare, to honor, from honor, dignity, office, reputation. And from the 1300s as confer honors on. And from 1300 as well, to respect, to follow. And matter of fact, in the modern age, if you follow somebody on Twitter or if you follow somebody on Instagram, you are honoring them. You are in fact worshiping them. And I know, again, it's these words are triggers and there's nuance to them, but in a literal sense, that's what you're doing. So if you follow someone's teachings, you are honoring them, you are worshiping them, because that's what the literal definitions of these terms mean. And so we will continue. And so, but I want you to kind of highlight, I want you to kind of jot down, if you are taking notes, in terms of honor, the words that I have highlighted here: to show respect and to present someone with something. This is going to be critical later on in our conversation. So now that we got worship and honor out of the way, now what does it mean when we talk about spirits or gods? Now, for those of you who followed the conversation, who was with us last night when we were talking about the Bayan Kole, you will recognize some of these slides. And as I mentioned in that show, that some of those slides will be repeated in this one because the conversations kind of overlap in many respects. And so, and of course, if you have Aluja Volume 2 or you've been involved in any other conversations where I'm talking about the deities, this will be kind of a repeat for you. So, but we want to have this recorded for the people who haven't had those experiences on this channel, and we want to document this for them. So I appreciate your patience. So this first slide here, I am currently editing a book by Dr. Shalima Lima Mukinge out of Congo, the Democratic Republic of Congo. And he is a Muluba of the Baluba people. And of course, he speaks Chiluba. And so the book that he has written that I'm editing is titled Muntu wa Nzambi, in the human being or the human as God's creation. And so there's no page number for this. This is something that I'm kind of pre-sharing with you all. And so there's some critical things that I want to highlight here to discuss the that we'll kind of discuss later on in our conversation. So he says the spirits are God's highest ranking creations. God created the spirits in hierarchies of seniors and juniors, majors and minors. And so I'm going to stop there. So just kind of reiterate that there's a ranking system in the African traditions, because he's talking about, African spiritual concepts, and he's especially highlighting the Baluba traditions, but he's also talking about many others that kind of reinforce each other in the text. And so he's letting us know that God created spirits and there are hierarchies. So there are senior spirits and there are junior spirits. God called some spirits to assist in the work of creation, others to become God's mediators to humans on earth. So he's giving the jurisdiction or the job descriptions or some of these spirits or forces, if you want to use that term. And so he's saying that some of them become mediators between the divine, the supreme divine, and human beings on earth. Some spirits took the human form during their God's assignment to earth. And I would show another text from Dr. Malidoma Some and others that, argue that all human beings are spirits who come to earth for an assignment. And so, so spirits become human beings. So human beings technically are spirits. On the other hand, some humans died heroically and were deified after death. This section examines the attitudes and actions of the humans towards the great spirits, also called divinities. And so I think this is from chapter 5 of the text. And so I just want y'all to keep this in mind as we're going through. And so as I have shown before, when we talk about this principle, this concept of a God or God in itself, the simplest definition that we can give this concept is the action generating principle. And what you see on the screen right now are variations. These may sound like different words, but these are all the same word that have evolved phonetically in different African languages across the continent. So whether you talk about nature, whether you talk about Nkole or Nkola, Nkwele or Nkwela, Orisha, Leza, Lisa, Maweya or Maweja, Mwari, Mbote, Kepper, Mboli, Mbori, Mawezi, Basi, Obasi, Awasi, Kabezia, Mpungu, Maweze, Mbazi, and Wasi again. All of these are the same word. And of course, we don't have time to go through the linguistic analysis, which demonstrates this fact. Some of this, of course, has been done in Aluja Volume 2, and I'll be doing I'll be doing a journal article on the etymology of Orisha. And we will show that all of these are just different variations of what we say is Orisha or nature or whatnot. And they come from a fundamental root, which when prefix and then the prefix was fossilized to the root kweti, meaning to make or to construct, to do or to act. Kweti also means to do or to act. And when you add an agent suffix or prefix, it means one who makes, one who does, one who acts, one who builds, one who constructs. And so you can find reflexes of this term in Middle Egyptian as ked, and Coptic is kult, meaning to build, and sango, kode, crafts, manual skills, and hasa, gida, construction, zande, kana, make, and hasa, kira, model, design, and Sumerian, kid, kad, to weave a mat, or kid and ki, to build, to make, or to act. And so these are the fundamental literal definitions of the words that you've seen there. And so oftentimes you will hear people say the words like spirits or powers or gods or energy. And the idea of energy or powers is a good definition of the fundamental roots without the agent prefixes and suffixes to the terms. And so we're going to do some more definitions right now. So the word power means the ability to have ability and the ability to act or do. It means strength, vigor, and might, especially in battle, efficacy, control, mastery, lordship, dominion, ability or right to command or control, legal power, authority, authorization, military force, or army. And so when you understand this, what it means, if you call a deity a power, you're essentially saying that this is a force that has dominion over a particular aspect of creation or the creating process, and it has the ability to make change. That's what power means, the ability to affect or make change. And so when we talk about energy, energy is the ability to act, to lead others, to affect, etc., even forcefully. The capacity for vigorous activity, available power. They're essentially synonyms. And the word energy derives from a root meaning work, to do. So when you talk about energy in a physics context, it is the ability to act or to do work. And so that's why, going back, these definitions are important here. Like when we had the Sumerian, kid, to build, to make, to act. It is a power, that's the ability to do such things. So you have the ability, and then you have the kinetic energy, that is the doing, the act in motion. So that's what those agents are. So one conversation in a text called Lubata Religion, Ritual and Authority Among an East African People, 1960. Remember one of those words that I gave you above in terms of the action generating principle? One of those is nature. And that word is cognate, well, it's cognate with all those words, but another cognate for the word nature is adro and adroa. And the author states that I translate adro and adroa as God, although the correspondence of meaning is not exact. Adro, the basic form of the term, refers to a personified force outside the control and beyond the understanding of living men, who are his creatures. Indeed, unlike our term God, Adro is also used to refer to a category of objects, which are manifestations of divinity and beyond the control and understanding of men. Many apparently miraculous things are called adro, or nature, or orisha, such as what I have called the guardian spirit of a man, or even matches. The word is sometimes used for testicles and the power of procreation. Adro lives on earth, especially in rivers. He is also found in large trees and thickets, and on high mountains and rocky places. He is in every stream. Adro is common to all Lugbara. In addition, each clan has its own spirit called Adro. The clan is a dispersed group which is not concerned in corporate activity. This spirit is also a manifestation of God's power, and in many cases is thought of as having been a distant ancestor. So as you can see in this one representation, there's a lot of associations with it. But essentially, what it's saying here is that, this term adro applies to these forces, these powers that are beyond the understanding of living men and creatures. And so, of course, this beyond the understanding is a subjective thing here, because as we will show that, science helps us to understand the gods. And so it's just a matter of critical study and the like. And so we're going to take the spookism out. And I like this definition because it puts it in a more plain context. And so in the Ga language, which is in West Africa, in like Ghana and surrounding areas, the word is won or wo, owa. And this term is, of course, cognate with nature and Mbori and Mbole and Maweja, Maweza, and all of those different forms. Again, we don't have time to go through the linguistics, but excuse me, trust me at this point that these are cognates. And you can see some of the reflexes in the ancient Egyptian and Yoruba languages and Bachama on the left-hand side. But in this text, Religion and Medicine of the Ga people, he gives a pertinent definition of the Won, which is the Netcher or the Orisha, the Iwin, the Won. These are all dialectical variations of the same term. So he says a Wo, by God definition, is anything that can work but not be seen, and includes the smaller beings of specialized and limited activity associated with medicines and magic. And so the underlying criterion for the most part has to deal with some kind of agent that has the ability to work but can't be seen. That means it's not part of your everyday ordinary experience, which is why leaders, for example, are considered deities, gods, because one, they have the power to make change, whether in an organization or even in a political context. But you don't see your boss all the time. And you don't see the king. You don't see the president. You don't see the vice president. You may see them through TV, but most of y'all will never meet your leader. They're an invisible power that has the ability to make change and affect your life. And so this goes for these invisible powers, but invisible from the ordinary experience does not mean non-physical. Because, energy, people think that energy is some kind of liquid or fluid that, permeates the ether, which is a non-existent concept that is floating around in the universe. And energy is a property of matter. And so a property like the desk that I'm looking at right now has a color property. And so, there's no such thing as color in the universe. It's just that's a word used to describe a property of a physical thing. And that's the same thing with energy, because energy depends upon a physical thing and its position and an ability to cause change of some sort in any type of, environment or inertial reference frame, if we want to get it in a physics and quantum and all of that good stuff. So the invisible does not mean non-physical. So they're still a part of the physical world and obeys physical laws. And so this definition here, I'll just repeat the whole thing. A womb, by God definition, is anything that can work but not be seen and includes the smaller beings of specialized and limited activity associated with medicines and magic. And so in today's context, a deity would be, for example, like an active ingredient in a modern medicine jar. And so remember what Dr. Mukinge mentioned earlier, that there's a hierarchy of the beings. So you have seniors and juniors. So if we're looking at, for example, on the screen is a picture of what you would see on a label of any kind of medicine, uh, vial or tube or whatever. And you'll see a list of the drug facts. And at the top of the drug facts, you'll see something that says an active ingredient. This would be equivalent in an indigenous African context as the senior god, the senior deity. And so in this instance, the senior deity of this drug is chlorpheniramine maleate, or 2 milligrams. And so this is the major ingredient in an antihistamine. And so this ingredient here, chlorpheniramine, is in fact a nectar, a wo, an adro, an embori, an orisha. You can't see that, but it is the active agent that does work and is invisible out of the general understanding and purview of the person. And so just to give you some context of what that is, it is an antihistamine used to treat sneezing, itching, watery eyes, and runny nose caused by allergies or the common cold. And so this is what the drawing of this deity is. So when you look at and see signs and symbols in terms of chemistry, this would be equivalent to us drawing, for example, Amun-Ra that you see on the right-hand side. So in ancient Egypt, when they talked about a particular god, they drew it in human or anthropological form, or zoological in terms of animals or other, types of objects. That's the kind of visionary that they would use. That's the kind of pedagogy that they would use. But in modern times, you would see something like this to describe the deity. And so you can see here, this is a compound. This is the formula at the top for this. And this has carbon, hydrogen, chlorine, nitrogen. And it's these combinations of these other deities, these junior deities that come together. So this chlorine molecule and this nitrogen, atom, when they combine, they make this deity. So it's just like how in ancient Egypt you have Amun as one deity, and then you have Ra as another deity. They combine them to create a deity or to conceptualize a deity that serves a particular type of relationship and function of some powers in the universe, perceived to be real or not. And so we have to look at this in a very different manner. And so the difference between the modern recognition of deities and gods and the traditional one is that in the traditional societies, they believe that you can call upon and activate these deities and send them on a mission that way. So one example of such an argument comes from Odupe Oduyoye in his text, Traditional Religion in West Africa. And so he talks about, for example, the Kra or the Kla among the Khan people, again in Ghana. And so this term is cognate with how we pronounce Ka in the ancient Egyptian language, but it's really Kra or Kla, because that when we transliterate this terms of capital A is really a nasalized blue or trill, which is a type of R sound. And so he states here that when we can think of the Kra, the spirit, the nature, the Orisha, et cetera, as a consciousness, that part of man that responds to a calling. This is one of the reasons why when you look up the definition of the word God in English and Germanic, one of the proposals is that it means to invoke, because invocation of the gods is essential in terms of the understanding of the indigenous way, the more primitive way of the understanding of the gods. And so in another text, again from West Africa, Aspects of African Civilization by Amadou Hapati Ba, he states the following: if the sacred force, Se, or Nyama, or Do, resides in creatures that exhibit an analogical correspondence with a quality of the sacred Most High, as such, he can also be invoked in such and such an object or a place after it has been consecrated by man. For example, sacred places, loaded statues, ritual masks, or tools used by the master of the knife, the sacrificer of the gods, for example. As for the latter, his ritual tools are not simply objects, but symbols which, as such, are at the same time receptacles of the infinite power of Mansa Ba, the powerful king, the invisible and omnipresent creator king of the universe. And so in the larger context of this citation is that he talks about how the supreme being endows things with its power. And these powers here can be invoked to be able to do what you want it to do. And if y'all check out chapter 12 of Aluja Volume 2, I give you some more examples and more potent ones that discusses that particular aspect of African religion. So I'm emphasizing again here that in modern science, they recognize the gods, and in the ancient traditions, they recognize the gods. The difference is in science, there is no belief that you can invoke and command the gods to do anything. But in the traditional religions, that is one of the beliefs attached to the notion of what a god is. And so we continue. So now how do we honor deities? And so when we're talking about worshiping and honoring and doing things, it is something you do. So what are some of the ways in which, we honor deities? So when people think about honoring deities, they think of, doing some kind of sacred dances or burning some incense or some sage or pouring libations or spitting out some alcohol over instruments or implements, I should say. There's a variety of ways in which the invocation and the celebration or honoring of deities are done across the world, you know. But one we're going to focus on here today, which is going to be relevant to our larger conversation. And so, again, citing the upcoming text by Dr. Mukinge, he gives one such way in which deities are honored. And so he says that offerings and sacrifices to the ancestors, well, that's actually the title of the subsection. So devotion to ancestral spirits includes offerings and sacrifices. The inventory of Igbo peoples, for example, their offerings to the ancestors, called Odo, includes tender palm fronds, eagle feathers, cola nuts, palm wine, richly cooked food, goats, cocks, rams, cows, and articles of clothing. So there's a variety of different offerings given. So remember, one of the definitions of to honor and to worship, it means to present. So to present means to offer something, to give somebody something. Whether it's in exchange for something or just as a gift to them. You're literally giving them something. And so we continue with the discussion with the late Amadou Hapati Ba. And so it's going to be a few slides on this because I'm kind of setting up the context. And these are the slides that I had yesterday, but again, we're repeating them here because they are relevant to what we're talking about now. So in that particular text, he says, in the Fulani and Bambara traditions, the only traditions to which I will make reference because I believe I know them, two terms are used to designate the person. For the Fulani, they are Nedo and Nadaku. For the Bambara, they are Ma and Maya. The first word in both languages means the person. And then the second word means the people of the person. Indeed, tradition teaches that initially there is Ma, the person receptacle, then Maya, therefore the various aspects of Ma contained in the Ma receptacle. As the Bambara expression says, Maka Maya Casa Ayero Kono. The people of the person are multiple in the person. When one finds exactly the same notion among the Fulani. So he's saying here that both in the Fulani and in the Bambara tradition, you have the person, the human being, in terms of we're referencing the physical body, and then you have the people of the person. That means inside the body or associated with the body, there are other entities. And this is something that is common throughout Africa, especially in ancient Kemet. So we're talking about the Ka and the Ba and the Ren, and the shadow of the individual. These are all aspects of the personality and the being of the human being. And the same thing happens, the same concepts exist in West Africa among these groups. So the concept of the person is thus, from the outset, very complex. It implies an interior multiplicity, concentric or superimposed planes of existence, physical, psychological, and spiritual at all levels, as well as a constant dynamism. At no time is the human person considered to be a monolithic unit, limited to his physical body, but rather a complex being inhabited by a multiplicity of beings in continuous motion. There is no question of a static or finished being. So you are what he's saying is that you're made up of different beings. In essence, you're made up of different gods. The human person, like the seed of a plant, evolves from an initial capital, which is his own potential. This potential will develop throughout the ascending phase of life, according to the terrain and the circumstances encountered. The forces released by the potentiality are in perpetual movement, just like the cosmos itself. Ma Ingala, or the God Master, created himself. Then he created 20 beings, or 20 deities. So remember Mukenge's from the Congo's, argumentation that, God created these spirits and he created junior and senior spirits that are responsible for different aspects of creation. Some of those spirits become human beings, and some of those are further deified after death for, doing heroic things in life. And so this is a different context of the same type of reality. So Mangala, God, created himself. Then he created 20 beings who together constituted the entire universe. But he realized that of his first 20 creatures, none was able to become his kumanyon, therefore his interlocutor, someone able to converse with him. So he took a little piece of each of these 20 existing creatures. Notice the words that he used, creatures, mixed them all together and used them to create a 21st hybrid being, man, to whom he gave the name Ma. The first word, therefore, consisted of his own divine name. Hold on one second. Hope y'all doing all right over there. So I hope I'm leading y'all somewhere. So I hope y'all are staying with me and getting what I'm saying. To contain man, the all-in-one being, Mangala, God, devised a special body, vertical and symmetric, able to contain in one and the same time a piece of all existing beings. Remember those 20 beings and elements that constituted the universe itself. And so those were combined to create man. This body called Fari symbolizes a sanctuary where all beings are moving in a circle. This is why tradition regards the body of man as the world in miniature, according to the expression Maye Dinye Meranin Die, which means man is the universe in miniature. So as this teaching is concerned, for the Fulani and the Bambara, the man itself consists of, at minimum, 20 different beings or gods that reside in the person. And we're going to see that this is the thoughts around the continent of Africa. And that it has a basis, or it has a parallel thought even in modern science. So in this text by the late Jordan Ngubani, the 1979 text Conflict of Minds, he gives us an understanding of what God is according to the Zulu tradition, which mirrors what we see in Congo, which mirrors what we see in ancient Kemet, which mirrors what we see amongst the Collagen, which mirrors what we see in Ghana, which mirrors what we see in Mali and other places. And so I just like the way that he words this. So I use this as one example. So in this text, he says, the Zulus coupled the ancient aphorism Umuntu Ngumuntu with Umuntu Akalawa, or Akalawa. The person is never so evil he is beyond redemption. The Zulu-speaking nomarchies of antiquity believed that all things had their origin in Ukobo, as one word or title for God. Everything in the cosmic order evolved from Ukobo. This Ukobo was primordial consciousness. It had no beginning and no end. It was the infinite total of the values of all things, which together made the cosmic order. So among the Amazulu, God is everything and all things at once. It is an infinite being, and there was nothing that was created ex nihilo of the divine, which means that everything is an evolution of the divine inside the infinite, in this case, Ukobo. And so the cosmic order, the universe is God. And so he continues, Ukobo was forever forming clusters of itself and combining these to produce phenomena. So just like in the Bambara Fulani tradition, where God created from himself these other beings and then combined these beings to create man, the same type of argument essentially is being made here by Ingobani in regards to the Zulu tradition. So the agmenation, the word agmenate means to cluster something. So the clusterings was regulated by Mtetho we Mvelo, which is a word that essentially is cognate with Meder. And so I'll deal with that in a different publication. The law of appearing. Since Ukobo, the consciousness, was alive and there was no death in it, since it was an infinity, human behavior in all of its forms, on every plane and in all situations, translated the law, Ma'at, into action. Nothing on earth or in the cosmic order could violate the law, for the violation was itself an expression of the law. So this is this latter part of the discussion is one of those major differences between the Abrahamic traditions and the African, and in particular the Amazulu, because those traditions will argue that you broke God's laws, like he has these specific little laws and that it's even possible for you to break them. That's not the continental African understanding of the law. It's impossible for you to violate any of God's laws. And so that word ukobo in the Zulu language means fact, reality, truth, and essence. As an adverb, it means actually, absolutely, certainty, definitely, indeed, really, truly. And you have ukobo lwa, his or her, its very self, or lukobo, actual, real, substantial. In other words, ukobo is reality. It is existence itself. So that's what they're defining, which is why it's the infinite totality of things. Ukobo is reality. It is existence. And so since existence has always existed, the human being as a type of existence emerges from a clustering of the aspects of the Ukobo, the cosmic order. And a quick break. I want to encourage those who want to support and who wants to continue to support the program as well as the upcoming documentary film to consider joining the Patreon page for this channel. It is at patreon.com/asarimhotep. And I want to first thank 5 individuals who they should be getting some of their items soon, within a week or two. And that is Emmanuel Adama, Donald Flournoy, Sylvia Stewart, Adam Bonsu, and Searching for the Real. And so these are individuals who have joined the Patreon page and have been on for at least 3 months. Well, I started it 3 months ago. So they've been on for 3 months. And as a result, because you get certain perks when you join the Patreon page. So depending on the level in which you join. So y'all items are being created and they'll be mailed to you within a week or two. So I just wanted to shout all of those and to thank all of our new Patreon members And thank you for your continued support. And again, for those who want to support, you can go to patreon.com/asarimhotep. And, some new things will be coming soon. So I will keep everyone updated on that. And we will continue. So going off of the Amazulu ideas of the nature of the universe and the divine itself, we find an example in reality as demonstrated by scientific experiments going back several hundred years now, that the earth and all of the elements and things that we see, for the most part in the universe, is this exact clustering process, this agmentation that was described by Jordan Ngabani in his text Conflict of Minds. And so one of the ways in which these elements, come into being is through the dying of stars or suns. And so this graphic here talks about how the sun in our galaxy, will burn out in the future. So it says about 4 billion years from now, the sun will slowly fade and burn out. The life cycle of stars, including the sun, goes through these particular stages. So it's talking about the region of condensing matter, then the stage our sun is right now in terms of that second graphic, and then the outer layers expand, cool, and shine less brightly. And then gaseous shells, it becomes a gaseous shell that moves around in terms of its diminishing core. And then the inner core star cools and dims. And so that fusion process stops in the center of a star. And that's because a lot of iron has developed in the inside. And then there's this kind of imploding process, which scatters, the heavier elements in the universe out. And then, over time, there's a whirling process and planets are formed and gases and clouds and water and mountains and vegetation and, microplankton and all this other kind of stuff, and evolution, goes through that process. And so just another graphic to kind of show how certain atoms and chemical processes, emerge from the implosions of stars. And so I ain't going to say all, the majority of the elements that we see in our periodic table derive from the cooking processes of stars. And so the only exceptions are hydrogen, lithium, and helium, because these elements emerged from the Big Bang. And then it's these elements that, as a result of cooking in the sun, that they combine in different ways and it produces these other elements. And then, of course, there's certain elements that are only made that are actual elements, but are artificially made by human beings. And so, but each and every one of these are gods. And so the scientists will not speak of it as such, but by definition, as we have seen from the beginning, these are invisible powers that can do work but not be seen. So you don't see these chemicals in these atoms doing work, but you can deal with them in various different ways to make certain things happen in products and things, if you understand the nature of these gods and how they can combine, just like you can combine Amun Ra, and Heru Behudet, and what other deities that combine in the ancient Egyptian pantheon. They do that in the Congo as well. So you have in Zambi, Kalunga, which is cognate with Amun Ra. And so when you understand the gods in this fashion, it takes the spookism out of it. And so just like as what was discussed among the Fulani and Bambara and in the Zulu tradition, this clustering of the forces of nature combine to make the human being. And so our bodies consist of these elements: oxygen, carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, phosphorus, calcium, sulfur, potassium, sodium, magnesium, iodine, iron, zinc. All of these elements were cooked in stars. And so on the right-hand side, you will see this famous saying from the late Carl Sagan, who states that the nitrogen in our DNA, the calcium in our teeth, the iron in our blood, the carbon in our apple pies were made in the interiors of collapsing stars. We are made of stardust. And so this is a reality. And so we are made up of a number of gods. So when they say that the gods are in you, the gods are you. These are your people of the person on the physical plane. And so we have the saying from Neil deGrasse Tyson: not only do we live among the stars live within us. And so this is a reality. So this is a cosmic dimension in terms of our relationships. And so without trying to go through a whole lesson in the origin of life on Earth, just know that these elements in certain environments produce life as we know it. And the first, creatures, and microbes evolved and combined just like the atoms that create the periodic chart that we showed earlier to create other life and living beings. And so what we're going to be talking about today is the microbiota or biota, depending on how you want to pronounce it, that lives in the human body. And so this one citation gives the following. It says the human body is inhabited by millions of tiny living organisms, which altogether are called the human microbiota. Bacteria are microbes found on the skin, in the nose, mouth, and especially in the gut. We acquire these bacteria during birth in the first years of life, and they live with us throughout our lives. The human microbiota is involved in healthy growth, in protecting the body from invaders, in helping digestion, and in regulating moods. Some changes in the microbiota may occur during our growth, depending on the foods we eat, the environment in which we live, the people and the animals that interact with us, or the medicines that we take with those active ingredients, those senior gods, such as antibiotics. The human microbiota helps us to keep us healthy, but sometimes these bacteria can be also harmful. We need to take good care of our microbiota to avoid the development of some diseases, such as obesity and asthma. We should eat healthy foods that contribute to the development of healthy microbiota. And so you can see from this little graphic here a representation of the human body and the different types of microbiota and bacteria that lives inside of us. So our body consists of all these living beings and creatures that we don't see. These are gods. These are netures. These are womb. By definition, they are anything that can do work but not be seen. There's only one way that you can see these, and that's through a microscope. And I know it's going to be some pseudo folks on this line talking about they can meditate and they can astro project and ride one of these microbes like a horse in a field somewhere. But I'm not dealing with y'all tonight. Anyway, these microbes, exist in various aspects. Matter of fact, all over our body, whether we're talking about our skin, the gut, in our mouth and throat, our nose, stomach, and the vagina. And it's especially important for the vagina because the passing of a child through the woman's vagina wraps them in certain microbes that help them to be healthy. And this is why certain children who are born through C-section have a lot of them have certain problems later on in life because they didn't get those microbes that develop and live inside of the vagina. And so essentially, our bodies are like Voltron. And so I might be telling my age right here. And, I don't know how many of y'all are watching this and were around when Voltron was a thing. But just in case you weren't, Voltron was this kind of Japanese anime cartoon series that, they would have these 5 robotic, I don't know if they was lions or panthers or whatnot, but these individual powerful robotic cats, or we'll just say lions, would combine to create one single robot that you see over here in the top corner. And they would all be responsible for a different function of the body. So you can see that one robot became the right arm, one robot became the left arm, another robot became the leg, the right leg, and the left leg, and one was the central body and the head. And so they all work together so that they can come together and be more powerful together so that they can fight the forces of evil in the world. And so your body is essentially a living Voltron, except our robots are microbes and cells. And so there's, several different publications in which y'all can learn more about, that concept. And so there's an article that you can search on the web. It's titled "More Than Half Your Body Is Not Human." And so Professor Rob Knight from the University of California, San Diego told the BBC, "You're more microbe than you are human." And this is the graphic that they use in the article. So you can see a human shell, but it's individual microbes that make up the body. So it makes you wonder, when we talk about the human being, what do we mean by the human being? Because again, this is a shell that is housing millions of different other living organisms. And so there's another text that y'all can get called 10% Human by Alana Colin, how your body's microbes hold the key to health and happiness. And it goes into the details of all of the microbes and the functioning of the body, and especially of gut health and all of that other good stuff. But essentially saying the same thing, that when we're talking about the person, the shell of us, the way that our eyes have evolved to kind of synthesize what we see and give an average of, it really is hiding all of the individual living cells and microbes and bacteria and other little animals and creatures that make up our bodies. All of these different things are, in fact, gods by definition. That's what a god is. And so we continue from the same sources before. We live with and surrounded by microbes. In other words, we live with and are surrounded by orishas. We live with and are surrounded by netures, mostly one-celled organisms that include bacteria, some fungi, such as yeast, and microalgae, also called microorganisms, even though we cannot see them with our eyes. What was the definition of the womb? That they could not be seen, but do work. That's what a microorganism is. That's what a fungi, that's what a microalgae, that's what a bacterium is. It is a god, a womb, an embari, an orisha. Microbes are the smallest living organisms known. They are everywhere in soil, rivers, plants, animals, tap water, and your keyboard, on your pillow, and in your body. Remember the citation from Mukalinge talking about the spirits and the gods existed mountains, rivers, air, etc., etc. Some microorganisms live with us and inside our bodies. Bacteria represent the majority of the microorganisms living in the body. Did you know that they have more bacteria in your body than you have human cells? Do you have any idea why these bacteria live in your body? We carry these neighbors with us every day, and usually they do not make us sick. Are they friendly or can they make us ill? How do they get in? What is their role in the body? And so on the left-hand side is some graphical representations of the gods, the bacteria, the orisha. And then on the right-hand side is actual photos taken from microscopic cameras. And so you can see some have round shapes, some look like kidneys, some look like waves, some look like cells. Oop, there we go. Where do microbes come from? The physical environment when a baby is born, like the vagina from the mother and the mother's skin upon touch, as I mentioned earlier. Lactose bacilli, a type of bacteria considered to be one of the good guys, live in the mother's vagina and they colonize the baby's intestines to help in the digestion of milk, which contains a sugar called lactose. So your ability as a baby to drink and digest milk depends upon the microbes that you are bombarded with coming out of the womb. After babies begin to eat, they get microbes from their diet. So you get other creatures by eating solid foods and the like. So now we go into a different part of the discussion. And we ask the question, like, how can we help the orishas help us? And so for those who see this graphic here, if y'all seen that movie, now I forgot the movie title. It's a famous line in the text. The text in the film. But how we help them help us is that we have to give them offerings. And so I'm using the old religious terminology for what is actually going on in the body. And so remember that these microbes are deities. They are netures. They are invisible to our eyes, but they do work and cause change, and they do stuff for us when we do stuff for them. So in a just an indigenous religious context, we propitiate the deities because we expect them to work on our behalf. So they give us protection. We want blessings from the deities. And so in order to do that, we have to give sacrifices and offerings. And anybody who is an African practitioner of any religion, whether it's the Yoruba religion, whether it's the Akan religion, whether it's some other more unknown traditions, you know that this is common amongst African people, this idea. And so you transfer that idea when you understand the other Orishas that aren't, Eshu and Oshun and Obatala. There's many more Orishas than those, than Ochosi, than Shango and Ogun. You have these other Orishas that y'all didn't even know about, that y'all not even trying to take care of, that y'all not trying to appease. And so microbes in the human gut. The human gut serves two major functions: nutrition and defense. The intestinal microbiota produces some vitamins that are good for us, such as vitamins B12 and K. These vitamins, which I call blessings, are not produced by human cells. The intestinal microbiota also helps in the digestion of food and protects the intestinal walls from invasion by pathogens. So if you provide the microbiota the necessary foods to keep them alive, they will in turn produce and give you blessings. Blessings in the form of vitamins B12 and K and some other things. Because what they do is they help in the digestion process, and they help to release the nutrients of the foods that you eat and distribute them in different parts of the body. So if you don't give the microbes and the bacteria the necessary, the proper offerings, the proper sacrifices, they can't in turn work on your behalf. And so, B12 is an Orisha. And what are some of the benefits of B12? It helps with the red blood cell formation and anemia prevention. It may prevent major birth defects, may support bone health and prevent osteoporosis, may reduce your risk of macular degeneration or macular degeneration, may improve mood and symptoms of depression, may benefit your brain by preventing the loss of neurons, may give you an energy boost, may improve heart health by decreasing homocysteine. I don't know how to pronounce that word. And supports healthy hair, skin, and nails. So if you provide the right and proper offerings, sacrifices to the gods of your body, some of them will give you blessings in the form of B12. And the benefits of these blessings, these vitamins, is some of what you see here. And so if you think differently, you think religion differently. Because remember that the gods and the Orishas have to deal with medicine and magic. All of this stuff, what a lot of people don't realize is in the indigenous African religions as we understand them, outside of the deeper relationship between people, has to deal with medicine. They all derive from an understanding of medicine and the concern of keeping the body healthy. How do we appease the body Orisha, the microbiota, the bacterium, et cetera, et cetera? One way that you can appease these Orisha is through prebiotics. Some of our microbes, aka orishas, need veggies, fibers from beans and chickpeas, cereals, dark bread, seeds, and roots. They help the growth of the microbiota, feeding bacteria that are able to break down this type of food into nutrients. That's their job. That can be used by the human body to improve our health. Therefore, we do not want these good bacteria to die because they are important to our health balance. The reduction of the good Orisha will allow the growth of the not so good and evil spirits that can eventually cause health problems. So you have evil spirits. Those evil spirits, those evil bacteria, microbes will get you sick. So if you want the good Orisha to protect you, you have to give them the proper offerings and sacrifices. This is what we're talking about here. Some of the quote unquote spiritual takeaways from this conversation is that your body is a temple or a shrine. And shrines are houses for deities. Microbes are a type of deity that is housed in various locations of the human body. These deities must constantly be supplied with offerings and sacrifices. And so to reinforce this notion that deities are housed in places, I repeat the slide from earlier from Amadaw Hapati Ba. He says that the sacred force, She, meaning Ashe, that's the cognate for it in the Bambara language. Ashe in the Yoruba is how you would pronounce this. If the sacred force, Ashe, or in Yama or Amen or Do, I don't know what the cognate would be for Do, resides in the creatures that exhibit an analogical correspondence with a quality of the sacred Most High. As such, he can also be invoked in such and such an object or a place after it has been consecrated by man. For example, sacred places. For example, loaded statues, ritual masks, or tools used by the master of the knife, therefore the sacrificer of the gods. As for the latter, his ritual tools are not simply objects, but symbols which as such are at the same time receptacles of the infinite power of Mansa Sheba, the powerful king, the invisible and omnipresent creator king of the universe. So remember what Amadaw Hapati Ba said previously, that Ma was the receptacle of the Maya, the people of the person, the gods. Your body is a receptacle. It is a shrine. It is a temple. That's where the gods live. And so when you're talking about making sacrifices and offerings, you have to first make those sacrifices and offerings to yourself in the form of healthy foods and minerals and etc., so that you can help the gods help you. And so, some of the offerings, I think this is Seti giving an offering of Ma'at in the picture above. What does it mean to offer? In Middle English, offering, to bring or put forward, to make a presentation, to show, exhibit, also to sacrifice. Present something solemnly or worshipfully as a religious sacrifice. Bring an oblation, from Latin offere, to present, to bestow, to bring before. Assimilated from ob to and then ferre, to bring, to carry, Proto-Indo-European, blah, 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 blah. Again, going back to worshiping, if you honor and respect and worship your body, if you honor and respect and worship your children, if you honor and respect and worship your husband and your wife and your parents and your friends, you would want to feed them that which would empower them. That's what, and as I've mentioned in other conversations, this is how you show love to people, because love has to deal with the sharing of food, feeding people, giving them sacrifices and offerings, because the human being is a God too. Again, with the honor definition, to do honor is to show respect to. Respect, esteem, to revere, to welcome, to present someone with something. This is what we mean by honoring. So if you honor yourself, if you honor your loved ones, you will feed them that which will empower them. And so this is why you would see the Africans feeding the deities their first fruits. And so this is Seti 1 here in this picture. This is a shrine, a voodoo shrine. And if you can, I don't know how well y'all can see on the screen, but you see bananas and grapes and apples and pears and mangoes. You see a pineapple, some ablutions, all types of nutrient rich stuff. You notice that when people sacrifice to the gods, they don't put candy and potato chips and some other mess on there. Why is it fruits, vegetables that are given to the gods on everybody's shrines and altars? This is an altar to Oshun. You see fruits, vegetables. Look like some cornbread though, right there. I have to double check that. So there's a phenomenon called food design. And if you understand how food is designed, you can use these particular types of strategies in terms of improving your health. And so from one of the sources, which I give at the end, food design to feed the human gut and microbiota. And that's the title of the journal article. And it states, microbes in the gut thrive on what is not bioavailable for the human body. In other words, unavailable food components are the actual food for commensal bacteria in the gut. Mounting evidence show that this microbiome diversity is associated with an inflammatory status and lean phenotype. This is not a random association. The expression of genes in the microbiome triggers biochemical pathways ensuring proper intestinal permeability and immunomodulation. And so I didn't cite it, but it talks about how having a very diverse microbiota helps you in terms of your health. So when you have a good diversity of gods within you, you have a better chance of being better chance of being healthy. And so when your microbiota is reduced and there isn't a great diversity, if you don't acknowledge and recognize, you try to get rid of all the gods, like how Jesus went into the temple and started knocking over tables, and how Muhammad, tried to get rid of all the gods in the Kaaba. If you do that in your body, you try to get rid of all the gods and only have one God, you're going to die. You need the Orisha in multiple. Ooh. It continues, the diet microbiome interplay is the current basis for implementation of personified nutrition. And microbiota composition is a key factor affecting responsiveness to nutritional interventions that will soon take into account initial stratification of individuals on the basis of microbiota. Designing food with a limited bioaccessibility could result in a low bioavailability of proteins, carbohydrates, lipids, and phytochemicals, resulting in higher levels of nutrient delivery to the microbiota and less calorie absorption for the host. This is a win-win situation, especially for subjects living in obese, so obesogenic environment and having no macro or micronutrient deficiencies. From this viewpoint, it is clear that the way a food is designed, and in part they're talking about commercial products, and being able to, because it's not enough to just eat certain healthy foods. The way that it is digested determines how much of the nutrients actually gets into your body. And so you have to do some combination. You have to combine certain deities to make certain things happen in your body. And so, from this viewpoint, it is clear that the way a food is designed can deeply influence the distribution of nutrients between the human body, therefore, the bioaccessible fraction and the microbiota. Delaying the digestion kinetics can be an effective strategy to deliver the gut nutrients and micronutrients, which could be, in theory, 100% bioavailable to humans. And so, if the body digests the food too fast, the nutrients can pass through the body too quickly. So if you can kind of slow down that digestion kinetic, it gives it more time to um, to to decompose the actual food and release the nutrients necessary for a healthy biosystem. And so this graphic kind of puts this into perspective, and why you want to have, the kind of benefits and disadvantages in terms of having a high bioavailability versus a low bioavailability. And so it's the low bioavailability that leads to a leaner body and a healthy gut. You can see from the graphic here that it has this wide diversity of microbes in the gut, but you see less diversity of microbes in the gut over here, and mainly bad microbes, which leads to obesity and other kinds of problems. So we have to understand and recognize the gods that live within us, which is why we have to eat those green foods that may seem nasty, but we gotta avoid those soft drinks and donuts. On, not saying you can't have them at all, but balance is key. And so, those type of foods should be kind of more so on a celebratory basis, but your regular everyday needs to be, greens and all other kinds of grains and other nutrients and things of that nature. And so, if you're able to do that, some of the benefits of recognizing and understanding the gods, of course, is a living longer, and living longer with better health and even a better countenance, so to speak, as we can see from this sister here who is 70 years old, who works out. She owns a vegan chef. I mean, she is a vegan chef and owns a vegan restaurant in Los Angeles. And I don't know how much of this you can actually see, but she is a very beautiful woman. And this is, of course, that combined with Black Don't Crack is a very good combination. But she worships the gods. She sacrifices and gives those microbes what it needs in order to have an empowering body. And when you have an empowering body, when you have a healthy body, you are better able to fulfill your purpose here in life. You're able to become a god for others because you'll have the ability to do the work. And so it first comes with you recognizing yourself as a God, and that you are composed of other gods, and that you have to make sacrifices to yourself in order to empower those gods, so those gods can protect you and help you to do what you came to earth to do. Otherwise, we end up with experiences like our good brother, Dr. Dre, from Dr. Dre and That Lover from MTV. And so, for those who are old enough to remember Yo MTV Raps, you know that Dr. Dre was a very heavy set brother. And because of diabetes, his legs had to be amputated. And so you can see one amputation has already happened in this photo on the right. This happened this year. But look at his leg, the left leg, and see how it is deteriorated. And so when we don't respect the gods, when we don't honor and worship the gods that are within us, the evil spirits take over and does a number on our temples. And not saying that, he can't ultimately fulfill his purpose, but it's going to be very hard for him to maneuver and get around versus being healthy and active to be able to do some things. So respect the gods, the Orishas, the Netchers, etc. And so when we talk about spirituality, as I like to quote Professor James Smalls, spirituality is reality. We take these indigenous concepts and we make them spooky. But this is a way, again, as I stated from the beginning of our conversation, that this is about pedagogy. How do we teach these concepts? So since a lot of our people are into religion and religious spookism, we can help them to better understand what it is when it comes to the religions. It's reality. It's not some pie in the sky, invisible, uh, non-physical, ethereal beings that has human emotions and gets on you for not doing such and such and such. That's where people have taken it nowadays. And this is why spirituality has not been effective for us as a collective, because we keep forgetting that spirituality is reality. And as I've articulated in other conversations, that spirituality ultimately has to deal with food, clothing, shelter, and maintaining good human relations. And you should add health, because without health, you won't be able to secure those things, because you're always constantly struggling to make things happen during the day and have to rely on others. So you help the gods help you. And so that process, that art of spirituality is what I call kimoyo. And it is ultimately the art of adding life to life, the art of adding value, of making things and life valuable, making things strong. It is the art of empowerment. And so you empower your body by the kinds of nutrients you take in. And so when you're feeling good and you working out and you're active, you are able to do things that others can't, because they don't understand what a God is. And so, people, when they talk about priest, They always want to have some priest wearing some long robes or some shells and bones, and having some long beard that's in some instances isolated and studying and meditating for 20 hours a day. Those aren't priests. A priest in the modern time is a scientist. And so this is a conversation, hopefully, to encourage many of you to become scientists. Those are the priests, to help us understand the relationship with the gods. You have astrophysic priest. You have biochemist priest. You have engineer priest. You have nutritionist priest. And so we like to use these old archaic terms and don't recognize them when we see them in our everyday experience. So a priest is not walking around, because they can cite 150 of the 256 old dudes. These are priests. And on another note, I encourage y'all to check out the other video that we did on the Ba and Kole, the eminent and powerful people, in terms of a suggestion for a new name and label for the African American ethnic group. And so you can find that on the channel. And this is the end of the presentation. So I thank each and every one of you for watching, and I'm going to unshare that document. And so I hope I made sense in whatever it is that I was talking about. And I haven't had the opportunity to go through the chat to see what the heck y'all are saying. So I'm going to spend a few moments and see what y'all are saying, and if I could respond to anything. And I know y'all having your own conversation, so a lot of this I'm just going to have to go back and see what it is that y'all are talking about. But I hope y'all get exactly what I was trying to do. Again, the definitions for the deities that we are given, a lot of people don't know how to apply them in a modern sense. And so they think that, again, that you have to create a shrine in the corner somewhere and then appease the deities. That's the belief of certain systems. I'm not here to argue for or against those systems. I'm just here to give a different understanding of this concept and to show how it can be applied in modern times. And so when we understand what a god or a deity is, then we are able to understand our relationship to them. And so I hope, again, I made sense tonight, and I'm gonna try not to go over time today and have a long video, but I want to thank Donnie Williams for your contribution, and thank you for joining the Patreon as well. And thank you to Michael Irvin for your contribution as well. Thank you for the super chat. And so, yeah, so, what do y'all think in the chat? I like to clickbait y'all with certain things, but y'all know that I'm always good with the information in terms of, not trying to spook out people. And so um, this is what I do. I go into the history and I bring clarity to the concepts. So anybody, like if anybody tries to say, for example, in one of the Abrahamic religions, that there is no God but Allah, they don't know what a God is. And there are millions upon billions of gods in the universe, and you have millions living in your body currently, and you have to honor and worship them, because if you don't, you will not live. And so we see that a lot of religious ideas and concepts are very limiting and doesn't allow for expansion and creativity. And so this is one of the things that we have to get out of, moving forward into the 21st century. And so again, I'm not here to bash religion. I'm just here to clarify certain concepts so that we can update our understanding and act appropriately. Um, um, Hold on, let me. No. Thank you, Ronald Williams, for your commentary. Exactly. And that's what this is about, being unapologetic and African, and unapologetically African. And Conan Lee, and thank you. I know it's late where you at, and I'm interrupting your sleep, but he says, I see your point now. I thought you were speaking a whole revolution of religion. I'm just trying to bring, because people don't understand what a religion is and they don't understand what gods are. And before we start dismissing these concepts, we should first seek to understand. And one of the ways in which I use to understand these concepts is through language and linguistics, and of course, um, historical comparative studies. And when you combine all of these things together, you get a deeper understanding, like, oh, okay, and so, like, African and just other world religions outside of the Abrahamic have gotten such a bad rep because those creators of those systems never took the time to understand, to even have a conversation or participate in these other traditions. And so now we in the modern age demonize them and don't understand that the direction in which they were going was the right direction, and that you can't escape it no matter what. And so for those of you who are thinking that you're going to escape religion, that you're not religious, that you're spiritual, you'll have to do the same things. Now, if we have, like, if someone has cancer, is sacrificing a bull going to cure your cancer? I can't say yay or nay, but you probably can prevent it by having a good and nutritious and balanced diet and exercise throughout your life. Worshiping and honoring gods that way. And so instead of having to rely on an ox or something to this nature in exchange of mythical energy or whatnot. Let me see. Exactly. Thought Evoker says Asar is just bringing religion down to earth, which is the basis of it. So that's what I'm trying to. Everybody wants to have religion in the sky somewhere, and religion is practical. Spirituality is practical. And again, I like to quote Professor James Small: spirituality is reality. People don't think that just giving a hug to somebody is a religious act. Saying thank you and bless you are religious acts. When somebody comes to your home and you offer them something to eat or to drink, that is a religious act. You know, empowering, supporting people's businesses is a religious act. That's what spirituality is. It's the art of adding life to life. And so I'm gonna do another presentation in the future on how spirituality informs your economics. And of course, it's gonna be in this same vein, it's gonna bring it back down to earth. Like people make it spooky. And it's not that. It's very simple. Let me see. Exactly. And so I don't see any questions or whatnot. I appreciate it. Let me see this. Good information. So microbiota are types of proteins, and then other proteins like hormonal and enzymatic would also be, guys, very helpful. Yes. So again, I can share the screen and go back to that slide. Hold on one sec. Let me go back to the top. So remember, you always got to keep this in mind in terms of what a God is. It's anything that can work but not be seen, and includes the smaller beings of specialized and limited activity. So, the microbes don't have, super big jobs. They have limited activity. But, in association with medicines and magic, for example, these are invisible forces. And like we see in the Lugbara tradition, these are manifestations of divinity, or Adro, or Netchers, or Orishas, et cetera, is used also to refer to a category of objects, which are manifestations of divinity and beyond the control and understanding of men. It's these invisible forces that work on our behalf or against us that are gods. They have the power to make things move and change. That's what this is. It's not spooky. And human beings are God, because we make things happen, we create things. Women can do it on a biological level. And then, of course, man and woman can make things from nature. They are gods. It's just a title. It's just a label to recognize those beings or forces that compel movement or action. That's why the definition that we had earlier in terms of these words for God is action generating principle. And any living person is an action generating principle. Being a God is nothing special about gods. That's the point I'm trying to get. There's nothing special or spooky about gods. It's a God is just a term that is just as basic as the word tree or water or apple. Like, there's nothing special about them. And so, religious minded folks will have you thinking all kinds of crazy because they don't understand what these terms mean. So I'll end that. See a few new comments. Hold on. Brother Hassan says the rich people in the opera sat at the highest level in the hall and were called gods. God could be anything of power. See, the Nation of Islam views this is why God is a weak translation. Actually, God is it's a perfect translation. And matter of fact, this is why I did the linguistic analysis in towards a comparative dictionary of Chicam and modern African languages. In that text, in the last chapter, is the etymology of the word God. The word God in English is also cognate with nature, with embari. These are all they're the same word and has the same connotation. And so it's not an issue. It's just the ability to do or act. Power is just simply, again, the ability to do or act. You can do stupid stuff. It's still a God has. See, the problem with a lot of, I'm sorry, I'm plugging in my phone here. A lot of the problem with us is that we think that the term God has any kind of moral association. There's no moral association with God. It's just the ability to act or do. Someone who has the ability to act or do, or something, some agent that has the ability to act or do. That's what power is. There's no moral association. There's no correlation at all between a God and morality and ethics. And that's the confusion. And that's why people are lost in this conversation or can get lost in this conversation. So, hold on. Let me see. So he says, oh, so did the priest and the priestess also have a science that exists beyond what our modern Western science is aware of? I can't say yay or nay because you would have to be able to scrutinize and put their so-called science to the test. And see, that's the difference between science and religiosity, I should say, because science is open. Because science is a methodology. It is a way of knowing. And it is a way of knowing by a process designed to falsify hypotheses. And that is not the case when it comes to religious gurus and people who swear to get their information from revelation, because you can't test it. So you can't argue that they have some knowledge beyond science, because regardless of what it is that they're involved in, whatever they're doing would still have to be under the guise of the laws of physics and the laws of the universe. So it's nothing. It's nothing. You can't, as I stated, earlier when I was citing Jordan and Gabani, you can't break laws. And that's what, like, a lot of these so-called religious gurus and priests make it seem as if like they're bending a law to make something happen. That's spookism. That's allegedly magic. But even if they were successful with what they were doing, it's still a law behind it, and a scientist can discover the law and write an equation to describe the law. And so it's hard to answer that question. Let me see. Let me see. Yes, Naja says divine or special revelation is the sacred cow you have to slaughter for sure. Exactly. That's how, there's no Quran without Muhammad getting this revelation. Matter of fact, the Bible ends with a book called Revelations. That's their whole thing. That's why it's not science. No matter what they say, if you got your information, even if you got your information from a so-called spirit, and it works, it would not be science because it is a revelation. And so a science or the discoveries of the scientific process applies to anyone and everyone around the earth. Like gravity affects everyone at the same time equally. You know, the second law of thermodynamics affects everyone equally. It don't matter if you are a very good person or you are a satanic midget rapist narcissist. The second law of thermodynamics is going to affect you the same way as it's going to affect the saint. But with these so-called revealed religions, they try to strive off of this concept of them being special. You know, Muhammad is special because God came to him directly in the form of Gabriel and gave him a revelation. And the Israelites are God's chosen people. They get the revelation. And so-called, you know, you have this even in Africa, where so-called priests are unique because they have some kind of special relationship with a deity. And they exclusively get these revelations. That's not science. Because you can't put your revelations to the test. You can't go back into somebody's dream and verify that they got the revelation. Because they could have got a revelation. But how do we know that they recorded it right or they transmitted the revelation correctly? You can never verify any of that. And that's what makes it unscientific. Let me see what else anyone's saying. Nope, I don't see. Yep. Western science wants to prove everything. Yes, because that's how you know it's knowledge. And so, you know, we're at a stage right now where, again, we don't care about your special relationship with the deities and with the ancestors. You know, if God wants something known to everybody, he needs to come down himself. That's how you stomp all of them. If Islam is the truth, tell God to come down and tell us himself Islam is the truth. It's not going to happen. If Christianity is the truth and we're supposed to follow Christianity, tell God to come down and tell everybody at the same time openly that this is the truth. It's not going to happen. And so, you know, if you want to stomp a religious person, all you have to say is 2 words: prove it. That'll get them angry and mad at you and running for the hills and want to commit jihad and all this other kind of stuff. Because you said the words prove it. Hold on. Let me see. Yeah, they're having their own conversations. But it's over the 2-hour mark, and I didn't want to go over 2 hours tonight. So I do appreciate each and every one of y'all for listening to my rantings. And I look forward to your feedback. And I wish everyone a great weekend. I will probably take a week off and come back at you a little later so I can do some other things. And I will see y'all on the flip side. And maybe somebody will have an after party online somewhere tonight that I can interrupt and troll their chat room. So with that said, y'all have a good night and a good weekend. And hold on one second. Here is my contact information. If you want to holler at me for some reason, I'm on basically all of the social media platforms: Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and of course, YouTube. And of course, you can visit my website at asarimhotep.com. And so, with that said, again, y'all have a blessed weekend and night. And I will see y'all later. Peace.